Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel that is Fluent English with Akash. Guys, in this video we shall be talking about the book of Job. But before I get into the book, let me give you a brief introduction of what this book is all about. Basically, in this book, you would encounter this interesting character called Job. Job was the greatest devotee of God, and seeing his piousness and austerity, God bestowed upon him all the precious commodities and entities. Further, he was the person who had extreme faith in God. Okay, but then once what happened, there comes an evil spirit called Satan. Okay, and Satan accuses Job that he would no longer be grateful to God if God would take away everything from him. Okay, and now that Satan wanted to prove his point, so he asked God for permission so that he could test Job. Now what happens? Satan inflicts so much of pain upon Job, but then Job didn't lose his faith in God. Okay, he held fast to his integrity, and this entire book recounts that how faith is. Okay, so how faith is not something that would depend upon these materialistic things. Okay, faith is something which would stand firm even in adverse situations. Okay, so the time the circumstances were not favorable to Job, the time the circumstances were not propitious to Job, at that time also Job held fast to his integrity. He didn't lose hope, and he kept on appreciating God. He didn't charge God with wrong. So this was how the faith of Job was, and ultimately towards the end of this book you would get to know that how whatever Job lost, okay, he got everything of that, and that too in double. Okay, so he got everything of that and that too in double. Okay, and this is how the devotion of God is. Okay, so this book recounts these two themes called faith and devotion towards God. Okay, further, he goes through tremendous pressure, but then he didn't let his faith to shake. Okay, because he knew that the entire universe is run by God, and God knows better than him that how he is dealing with the entire universe, how dynamically he is dealing with the entire universe. So he cannot question the authority of God. Okay, and I just told you that how he got everything in double after he lost everything. So again, this is again a kind of gratefulness of God. Okay, so let us now quickly move into the book without any further ado. All right, so the book of Job. Now let us first look at the character of Job. All right, so Job was born in Uz, right? He was born in Uz. And then about his characterization, he was a person who had not committed any sin. He was blameless, okay, and upright. He was a noble man. He had done some noble deeds. He was the person who lived under the fear of God. See, it is not about being so afraid and frightened about God. It is something that you are being respectful towards God by being fearful to him. So what does it imply? What does it imply? It implies that when you fear God, it doesn't mean that you are afraid of him or you are frightened of him. No, it doesn't mean that, but it means that you respect reject him, and you have a kind of fear that you may not commit any sin, that God would get upset with you. Okay, so you constantly have that fear in your mind that you don't commit any heinous crime, otherwise God would get angry with you. Okay, he would get angry with you. So that is the implication over here. And he was the person who shunned evil. Okay, he was the person who would never ever let evil to come around him. Okay, he was the person, who would always let these positive vibes to encircle him. Okay, and now let us talk about the rest of things. So he was blessed with 7 sons and 3 daughters, right? And apart from that, he had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys. Okay, so he had all these animals as well. And he had a large household, right from he his household included humans as well as animals, and he had this large household. So you can assume how delightful God was at Job. Okay, but then there is one thing that his sons liked to party. Okay, his sons liked to party. So Job used to consider it as a kind of sin. He used to think that it would soil the soul of the soul of his sons. So he used to pure them, he used to sanctify them, and he used to offer burnt sacrifices. For example, in this era also, we go to temples and we offer something or the other thing. For example, we offer sweet dishes, sweet dishes in temples. In the same way, Job used to purify his sons and daughters, and he also used to offer burnt sacrifices. Okay, I hope this much is clear to all of you. And now let us move ahead. Okay, so now let us look at Satan's allegation, that what Satan is to tell us. Okay, so now what does Satan says? So he says, if Job were not bestowed upon these precious entities, then he would have disgraced God. Yes, what does Satan say? Okay, he says that if Job would not have been given these precious entities, then he would have disgraced God. Okay, so he wanted to prove that how mortals are, how humans are. They only revere, they only venerate, they only worship God only for the sake of getting materialistic things, only for their personal benefits. So this was what the point of Satan. He wanted to prove this point. Okay. And Satan wanted to test Job's austerity. He wanted to check that how purified the soul of Job is. Okay, so he wanted to check if Job would be so grateful to God even in the time of hardship, or he would disgrace the authority of God just after being hit by the hardships, just after being hit by these unfavorable circumstances. So he wanted to check Job, right? So what does Satan want to prove? So he wanted to prove that there is no thing like unselfish pity. Okay, he wanted to prove that no mortal does anything does anything good without any selfish motive. So he wanted to prove that that behind doing in everything there is always a selfish motive hidden. So he wanted to prove that, and apart from that, he wanted to prove that men do right only when it is profitable to do so. So he wanted to prove that men would only worship God because they want these materialistic things. They are not that concerned about the devotion and all, but they are simply concerned about the materialistic things. They want these commodities, they want these things in their lives, and for that very matter they are worshipping God. So Satan wanted to prove that. Okay, now what happens? Satan asked God so that God would allow him to test Job. Now what happened? See, it was not like that God didn't have faith in Job. God did have faith in Job. God had extreme faith in Job, but then he tested Job. See what actually happens in our lives. We encounter so many of catastrophic situations. Okay, and these are some problems. So, what was I saying? That God doesn't give problems without their solutions. Okay, so God gives problems because at times what happens, if you are only bestowed upon with only the good things, then you would certainly forget God. You would certainly forget to thank God for everything He has bestowed upon you. Okay, so these suffering, these hardships come so as to strengthen your faith in God. Okay, so this was a point I wanted to make. Okay, okay. Now let us move ahead. Job loses in one day. So what does he lose? Okay. So he loses his oxen, donkeys, and their servants to Sahabian raiders. Okay, so these Sahabian raiders, okay, they plundered or they looted all the oxens, donkeys, and their servants, right? And his sheep, sorry, his sheep and their servants, all of them was set on a fire, and that fire came straight away from heaven, right? And his camel and their servants were taken by Chaldean servants. Okay, so these Chaldean servants, took hold of his camels and the servants. Okay, and his sons and daughters were also killed. Okay, everyone was killed. Okay, and he was all alone with his wife. Okay, now what happens? Now let us see the reaction of Job to those losses. Right, so he moans. He was feeling melancholic. He was extremely plightful. Okay, he was extremely, he was feeling extremely, extremely. He was feeling, down in the dumps. But then what does he do? He tears his robe. Okay, he tears his robe. It means that he tears his outfit. Okay, and he shaves his head. Okay, he shaves his head and he falls to the ground for prayer. Okay, for contemplation that what he has done and why is God so angry with him. Okay, what is the reason? What is the reason of this hardship? Okay, but then he doesn't complain. Okay, he doesn't charge God with wrong. Okay, he rather says that it is his mistake. Okay, and it shows that how strong his faith is. Okay, so he doesn't charge God with wrong. He holds fast to his integrity, and These line itself, itself proves that how strong, how staunch his faith was. Okay, now let us see what Satan asserted. Okay, so Satan asserts that the test was not that severe. Now what happens? Job passes this test, and having passed this test, having qualified this test, now what happens? Satan comes and he says that this test was not that severe. This test was not that hard, or you can say, or that arduous, right? So Satan wanted to say that this test is not that arduous. Okay, now what would I do? Okay, I would touch his bone and flesh. It means that Satan would now do something with his body. Okay, and but then God allowed Satan to do so, but then God didn't allow him to take Job's life. Now what happens? Now something terrible, something frightening, and something really gruesome happens. Something really gruesome happens. Right, and what actually happens? He was afflicted with a terrible disease, Okay, so what actually happened? Tumors. Okay, tumors developed on his skin. Okay, and tumors developed on his skin, and there were possibilities that that it could be elephantiasis and leprosy. Now what are these diseases? Basically these are skin diseases, right? So people predicted, or people pondered that that this disease could either be elephantiasis or leprosy, right? And it was really painful, it was really plightful. Okay, extremely plightful. And this disease was characterized by boils. Okay, there were so many boils on his skin, and he was constantly feeling itching all over his skin. Okay, his bones were corroding. Okay, and his skin had gotten black in color, and he was suffering from this fever, right? So it was a kind of a flight in the ointment. Okay, so it was a kind of a fly in the ointment. A fly in the ointment means that he was going through this rough situation, this harsh situation. All right. Now what happens? Job's wife, okay, his wife comes, and his wife asks him to curse God and die. But however, Job didn't accept it. Okay, so his wife asked him to curse God and die, but Job didn't accept it. He didn't charge God with wrong. Okay, so it shows that his wife didn't have that spiritual caliber which was held by Job. Okay, she was not keeping hold of that caliber. And apart from that, she also proved that how mortals are, that they only worship God when circumstances are favorable to them. Okay, and again, this is not faith. When circumstances are favorable to you, you end up going to temples, you end up thanking God. When circumstances are not that favorable to you, when circumstances are not that healthy to you, then you end up disgracing the authority of God, you end up raising questions on his authority. So Job showed, and it clearly showed these instances through the characterization of Job. Okay, now let us see the arrival of Job's friend. Now let us see the arrival of Job's friend. Now there were three friends of Job. Okay, the one was Eliphaz from Temanite. The second one was Bildad by Shuhite, and the third one was Jophar from Namathite. Okay, so all three of them, they have come to mourn with him, okay, and they get overwhelmed at the sight. Okay, so it was a very it was a very grievous situation. So it was a very grievous situation. They were feeling indeed melancholic for his for their friend. But then what happens? They cried out and they tore their robes. They sprinkled ashes on their heads. Okay, and they sat silent for 7 days and nights. Okay, so they kind of they did this see, they were feeling really mournful for their friend. Now let us see Job's soliloquy. Basically, what does Job say? Job does not charge God with wrong, as I have been telling you this thing. Okay, so Job, he curses the day of his birth. He then bemoans why he did not die at birth. Okay, he criticizes him. Okay, he demonizes his own character. He says that he should die, and why he did not die at the time of his birth. Okay, so he cursed not only the day of his birth but also the night of his conception, right? So now let us see the speeches of Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. So after sitting silent for 7 days and nights, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar say something to Job. And what does this say? What does this say? This person Eliphaz, one of the friends of Job, he says that innocent people do not suffer, only wicked suffer. So he implied that people who are innocent, people who are indeed pious, 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 right? People who are indeed benevolent, people who indeed hold fast to their integrity. Okay, they would never ever suffer. God would never ever let an innocent to suffer. Okay, and you must have committed some sin. You must have committed some horrendous crime, and for that very reason you are suffering. So Eliphaz says this thing. Okay, now what does Bildad says? What does he say? He rebukes him for his strong words. He says that Job suffered because he was guilty. Okay, so what does he say? So Bildad, the Shuhite, he comes and he rebukes Job for his strong words, and he says that God is just. God can never ever be wrong. Okay, and he suffered because he was not because he was guilty. Okay, he was not blameless. Okay, and he suffered because of his own wickedness. So this was the argumentation of Bildad, and then Jophar says that Job is getting very less punishment of what he actually deserved. So Jophar says that Job is getting less suffering than what he deserves. Okay, so Jophar wanted to say that he deserved more punishment than this. He deserved more pain than this. Right. So now what happens in response to his friends, Job says, what does he say? He chides his friend. Okay, he admonishes his friends. Okay, because they were mocking at him, because he calls his friend as a forger of lies, worthless physicians. Okay, what does he call his friend? He calls his friend forger of lies. Okay, so he He admonishes his friend, calling them forger of lies. He calls them, he admonishes them, saying that you people are telling lie. Okay, I haven't committed anything wrong. Okay, my character is still pure. I haven't committed any horrendous crime, nothing of that sort. So you people are forger of lies. Okay, and further he calls them worthless physicians. He calls them worthless physicians. Right. So, this was the argumentation of these three friends and the response of Job. In a nutshell, I would say that this book talks about the adverse condition of Job, that how he goes through this catastrophic situation, and in spite of these extremely harsh situation, he holds fast to his integrity, to his faith, and he qualifies the test which was assigned to him. Okay, and one thing I want to point out over here, that the condition of his flesh makes him toss all night, the time he was afflicted with that terrible disease. Okay, and due to that, he kind of tossed all through the night. Okay, and his days swiftly go by with no hope of seeing good again. Okay, so he expected to descend to the grave, and he wanted to be soon forgotten. Right, so this was what Job was feeling towards the mid of the book. Okay, but then things turn out nice for him towards the end of the book, that how he passed the test which was assigned to him. Okay, a test of spirituality and all. So I hope you like my video, and this is not the end, right? So I would be coming with more such videos, and in the upcoming videos I would be coming with more lessons of the book of Job, where I would be teaching you some more aspects of this book, that the some other argumentation of these three friends, and then the response of Job. So we would be covering everything. So stay tuned with me, or like my channel, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to put your valuable comments in the comment box. Thank you so much. Bye bye.